Now I'm just going to move on to how AI works. So this is part two, how AI actually works and how it learns from data and creates data. So as we've already seen, artificial intelligence describes the ability for a computer to do something that we would normally associate with human intelligence. How does it do that? Well, one way is machine learning. Machine learning is a kind of AI system that learns how to do things from finding patterns in data and gradually getting better through training. So let's just see how this works. We have this AI model here that we want to teach how to identify photos of cats. The way we would do that is we need to collect training data. That's a whole heap of examples from the particular problem domain that the AI model is working within. So in this case, you would have lots and lots of photos of cats and other photos too, preferably from all different types of cats that the AI model could ever see, from different angles and different lighting conditions. And that is then fed into a training process, which teaches the AI model how to identify patterns in the photos to help it identify which ones are photos of cats, which ones are not photos of cats. The AI model will then make a prediction based on the pattern that it thinks that it's identified. To start off with, this prediction is almost random, that the prediction will almost certainly be wrong in the early stages of this training process. And that prediction, so in this case, whether or not the photo is of a cat, is fed into an evaluation process, which decides how close that AI model's prediction was to reality, of whether it was right or whether it was wrong, and how far away was it from being right or wrong. That evaluation decision is then fed back into the training process. So if the AI model got it correct and correctly identified a photo of a cat, the evaluation process says, good job, AI model. Keep doing whatever it is you're doing. You've correctly identified the cat. If the AI model got it wrong and said a photo was a cat when it was actually a photo of a dog, the evaluation process will say, whatever it is that you were doing, do it differently because you got the prediction wrong. And eventually, over time, and this can take a lot of computational power for complex problems, and so it can take very powerful computers and entire data centers months or even years of going through this process to gradually improve what the AI model is doing. It goes through this process until eventually the AI model will actually also be able to work correctly on data that it hasn't seen before, on data that wasn't in the original training data set. So this is how machine learning works, broadly, at a very high level, how a computer system can gradually learn how to do something without having that pre-programmed into it at the beginning. It will learn it by identifying patterns through the data. Now, how does it actually learn? Well, deep learning is one kind of machine learning that uses something called artificial neural networks to find patterns in large amounts of data. So the difference with deep learning is that it uses a particular technique to let it see more accurate patterns in larger bodies of data than other machine learning methods. So I won't go into this in too much detail because I would have to do a whole program on the maths behind it to go into too much detail. But at a broad level, it uses things called artificial neural networks, which is almost like the AI's brain. It's not quite accurate to say it's the brain, but it can be useful to think about it in that way. That's almost like the AI's brain. This is how the AI system stores its understanding of the problem and stores its understanding of the patterns. You have a large collection of these little circles, which are called neurons, and they operate on numbers. They do mathematical calculations and share the numbers between each other. And by doing that sharing, it actually can identify patterns and generate new material from that. Now, this is a relatively simple artificial neural network that you'll actually see on the screen right now, but tools like ChatGPT have enormous neural networks, something in the order of trillions of neurons that it's working with hundreds of layers deep. And so this is how tools like ChatGPT are able to store its understanding of language and then use that to generate new content. Generative artificial intelligence is a form of deep learning. It creates content by learning how to recognize and replicate patterns in data using deep learning AI models, like large language models. Now, what are large language models? Well, large language models are trained on enormous collections of text data. So for things like ChatGPT, you can think of it's trained on pretty much the entire World Wide Web, plus other data sources as well. So it's trained on all of this text data using deep learning to understand and then reproduce language. Using deep learning, large language models learn the statistical probability of words being related to each other and in what context they most often appear. So you can think of large language models, which power tools like ChatGPT, they're almost like very powerful text prediction engines. So think about when you're trying to write a text and your phone is telling you what word it thinks you want to put next. Large language models are almost like that, but far more powerful and far more sort of complicated underneath. So when a large language model receives a prompt, it tries to guess the most appropriate sequence of words that it should then give as a response. Now, those of you here that already know a little bit about how generative AI works will know that a large language model really operates on things called tokens rather than actual words. But just to make it a little bit more simple to explain, I'm going to pretend that large language models operate on words. So here's how that works in a little bit more detail. So we have a prompt that we want to give the large language model and then get some kind of output. The large language model, through training, has developed an understanding of how language works. So that is, what are all the words that it could see in a language and how are they related to each other? Which words most often appear with each other? Which words are nouns? Which ones are adjectives? Which ones are verbs? How that actually should be structured in a sentence. And it draws from that to then be able to understand what the prompt is that you put in and know what a logical kind of output might be. So yeah, this is the understanding. This is the large language model's understanding of how language works. So let's say we give it a prompt. So the example that I used earlier about a recipe for chocolate spaghetti. The large language model takes that prompt, uses its understanding of the structure of language to then try and guess what is the next word that it should try and give you. So it looks at some words and it picks which one it thinks is the most likely to start a response that will actually answer your prompt. So in this case, in the example that I gave it, it picked ladies as the most logical next word. Now, you might then ask, why was that the most logical next word? And this is where AI can get a little bit difficult to analyze, because deep down, the large language model's understanding is stored in that neural network, which in tools like ChatGPT are trillions of neurons doing trillions of mathematical calculations. And so it can be very difficult and, in fact, pretty much impossible for a human to look at what the AI model did and decide how it came to that understanding, how it came to that output. But in this case, the large language model decided that ladies was the most logical word to start its output with. Once it's selected it's the most appropriate word, it will then try and pick what the next word would be. In this case, it picked and so on. It'll then pick what the next word should be, looking at both the prompt that we gave it and the words that it's already generated so far, and then pick the next most suitable word, which in this case was gentleman. And so on and so forth until it's generated the entire output. So in this way, it's almost like a powerful text prediction engine. So that's how a large language model works, which is how generative AI models understand and generate text. Gen AI that generates images and video works a little bit differently. Visual Gen AI tools use other methods like diffusion to generate images and video. I won't go into this in much detail. It can be somewhat complicated to go through, but at a very high level, this is how diffusion works, for example. The AI model will generate a bunch of noise, so random pixels of random colors, and through training, it's learned how to turn that random noise into rough colors and shapes that may start to resemble an image that would answer the prompt that you gave it, and then turn that rough assortment of colors and images into of colors and shapes into an actual high resolution image that you can then use. This is, of course, a very much a simplification of how this works. But at a high level, this is how tools like Microsoft Copilot might use diffusion to generate images. Now, what we've seen here is that Gen AI is statistical. It's using probabilities and statistics to decide what order of words or what colors of pixels it should create to answer your prompt. Now, fundamentally, most Gen AI doesn't actually know anything about the world. So most Gen AI tools do not store or understand knowledge or meaning. Now, I say most because some do, but most that you'd be working with don't fundamentally store or understand knowledge or meaning. Large language models, for example, understand the structure of language very well, but do not really know what the words mean. So if there are any linguistics students here, large language models really understand the syntax of language, but not necessarily the semantics of the meaning of what the words actually mean and what is being communicated by those order of words. And so there is no intention or agency behind what the Gen AI tool creates. It's all probabilistic. These AI tools that are very advanced can feel like you're talking to an actual person that's thinking, but AI isn't actually thinking necessarily. It's really just using probabilities and statistics to generate a response that would seem to make sense to you.